Hey you guys, it's me, Veronica. If you've been to my blog before, you know that I'm on Twitter, Chile_Pepper, Chile_Pepper, and also that I'm a Habs fan and that I live in Vancouver. I don't live in Vancouver proper, I live in Greater Vancouver, but as a Habs fan who lives here, having lived through everything that happened with the Stanley Cup Finals and the aftermath, it's been a really interesting experience, and I just wanted to talk about that. So, as far as the Stanley Cup Finals go, we all know it was played between the Vancouver Canucks and the Boston Bruins. And we know that, I mean, everybody knows this. Even the Boston fans know that Boston was lucky to get past Montreal, and I mean, whatever, lucky to get past Montreal in the first round. And then went on to be the Bruins for the rest of their series. So it was interesting to me to see Vancouver fans, with whom I'd never really felt any kind of allegiance whatsoever, except for that we were united now in our mutual dislike of the Boston Bruins and their style and their media and their fans. So being united with them was a different feeling, to say the least. If you saw my last post, I never kind of felt anything for these Canucks. But it was interesting for me to see the fans and the players reacting for the first time to, being in a ring with the Boston Bruins. It was, we all saw all of the chirping that went back and forth between the teams, and to me it felt like I was always that kid in school that if I got picked on, I'd be like, why am I being picked on? Like, what? But as what the Bruins do, right? Like, they're big bullies, and their media and their team and everybody alike like to pick on people and pick on the weaknesses and all the modus operandi. And the Canucks just didn't know how to react, right? Because they really hadn't come up against this kind of thing before. For me, it would have been better for the Canucks just to whatever, ignore it, and it's just, background noise, which is really what it is, and just go out there and play their game. And, they were certainly a more skilled team. They certainly were throughout the regular season. Sedins and Luongo completely choked, and we all know why. The Bruins just got in their heads. That's, the long and short of it for me. Unfortunately, the bad guys won, as I like to call them. Although, as I was sitting there in that final game watching the game, after the first period, it felt like Vancouver was winning, even though they weren't. It felt like they were winning. They were just playing so much better, and really a lot better than Boston, certainly in the first period of that Game 7. But just nothing was going past Tim Thomas. Tim Thomas was having one of those nights, which he frequently had against the Canucks in that series. Just one of those nights, because they're not every night, and he has a lot of bad nights, which he had, for example, against Tampa just in the previous series. So that's what I kept on saying, like, watch the Tampa tapes. Like, these guys put so many pucks past this guy. He's not Superman. He's a great goalie. But he's not 100%. He's not 100% every night, and he can be beat. But in the end, these guys got in their heads. So we were watching this game. After the first period, it actually felt like Vancouver was going to win, like just law of averages. One of these pucks was going to get past this guy. Luongo started playing badly. The Sedins were quite bad, and, the worst possible thing happened. However, it was weird for me, having hated Boston all my life, particularly Mark Recchi, who used to be a Hab, and since joining Boston just seems to have become so like an unlikable kind of person and sort of cheap and all the rest. It was in about the middle of the third period that I started looking at these guys and thinking, well, they're going to win, and do they ever deserve it? Like, I hope they win, because, I mean, by then it was a foregone conclusion, but these guys really, really deserve to win. And then after the game, I watched each of these guys touch the cup, and I actually felt emotional for them, obviously what the Bruins were feeling, winning the cup and raising the cup and all of that. It was really emotional because, when you're human, you can feel these things, and a lot of that sentiment was shared by a lot of Canucks fans around me. So it was interesting after the game too, watching the videos back of Tim Thomas speaking to the press and being really generous and kind and saying nice things about Vancouver and Luongo the Canucks and Luongo and how much he respects them and blah, blah, blah. It's not the story I heard the next day on Team 1040. Some guy from Rogers Sportsnet was saying that the motivation, one of the biggest motivations for these Bruins was that they really, really fundamentally dislike the Canucks, like fundamentally. Not just, I mean, it's good to not like your opponent and it drives you and everything else, but these guys really didn't like the Canucks. And I mean, on the one hand, it's like the same thing that Boston's always yapping about how people dive and all that stuff. And for one, I do have to say, yeah, there are divers, and yes, there are embellishers, but they are on every team, including you, Boston. I think it was in Game 1 in Vancouver where Thomas went all the way out of his net, like 6 feet out of his net, so that Burrows couldn't even avoid him, like couldn't help it. You know, whatever, touched him. I don't even remember what he did. But Thomas went diving back into his crease like a graduate from the Greg Louganis School of Diving, flip-flopping all over the place, got the penalty, and you know what? Those rules don't count against the Bruins. You know, the penalty got called on Burrows, and, you know, they'll turn right around and start calling everybody else divers again. So that's the kind of thing that happens there, right? So it's easy for Mr. Thomas to be magnanimous and generous in his comments regarding Vancouver. One can argue that he didn't have to say anything at all, so it was, charming of him that he did and everything else. But it's not the real story, apparently, according to this guy who knows, and he's on the inside. So, anyways, the worst part of everything was obviously what happened after the game, and what happened, not just what happened after the game, but what happened the day after that. So, obviously, we all know that these cretins who went downtown and had planned to cause hell no matter what, made good on their intentions and, caused like millions of dollars worth of damage to downtown and to vehicles and businesses and everything else. So that's horrifying. And I mean, the minute that I saw this on the news and I saw what was going on, I was horrified and embarrassed for Vancouver, number one, just because it's like, oh God, now not where I live. It's awful. But on the other hand, I was also like, Ave Maria, I know what's coming. Prepare yourselves, Vancouver, because the other big hockey cities and, Toronto and Edmonton are going to be tut-tut-tutting and looking down their noses at you for the rest of the time because of this. And I can say this as a Habs fan because of all of the hockey-related riots that have happened in Montreal. And Montreal doesn't even have to be in the final to riot, by the way. It doesn't matter what it is, especially when you're talking to Leafs fans or Boston fans or everything else, after they've been kicked out or haven't even made the playoffs. The fans are always like, yeah, well, why don't you just go flip some cop cars because that's what you can do best. Like, right? Vancouver times 1,000. This is what you're going to get now. So, just warning you because that's the way it works. But, I mean, not even I could have predicted the level of bile that was going to come out from these other cities. Not just that, yeah, there's a bunch of hooligans and a bunch of teenage jerks. A lot of them are in high school, these creeps that are being outed now, who went out and did this, and they're being just idiots. And those kind of idiots live in every city, by the way. Edmonton, I'm looking at you because you guys had a hockey-related riot too. Toronto, you haven't, but, if you make the playoffs, I'm pretty sure that that'll happen in Toronto too. But what's going on here is the absolute vitriol coming out of Toronto, particularly the Toronto media, just not even just talking about these teenagers and these little jerks, but Vancouver as a whole, we're all infected with this, I forget what it is that guy from the National Post said, but I mean, obviously that's not true. We all know that. I didn't speak to a single person the following day that didn't, like in Vancouver the following day, who didn't absolutely despise what had happened. And obviously, I mean, it would be idiotic to suggest that that is um, indicative of our whole society here in Vancouver. It's also idiotic to suggest that it's because they are Canucks fans. I mean, they happen to be downtown, and it's possible that it's incidental that they were Canucks fans because these guys are just complete jerks. They're idiots, and they were out there for their 50 minutes of fame. They knew that they were going to have pictures for their Facebook and for their blogs and for YouTube and whatever it is. They're so stupid that they decided to capture all of these moments and talk about it on social media, and now they're being caught. So it's just, for me, it's really unfortunate, and I feel really defensive as a Vancouverite, because it's not just, they won't just say the rioters or the looters, they say the Vancouverites. You know, it's just unfortunate to be painted with the same brush, and it's stupid to be painted with the same brush. I'm a mom and, you know, a professional and a good citizen and everything else. And 100% of the people that I know are as well. So they're not all moms. Some are dads and some don't have kids, but you know what I mean. So anyways, the rest of Canada, calm down. You know, this happened. It happens to a lot of cities when hockey playoffs happen. And also don't make the snide joke of, oh gee, I'm so glad Canada won the cup last year, otherwise what would have happened in Vancouver? I'll tell you what, in Vancouver last year, it wasn't just Vancouver who was here, it was the rest of Canada, the rest of the world who were watching and visiting our city. So you know, whatever would have happened last year, I wonder who you would have attributed that to. Probably Vancouver as well. But it's not going to affect our economy. It's not going to affect our tourism. We are getting boatloads of tourists, literal boatloads of tourists all the time, because every Friday I work down by where the cruise ships come in, and we have boatloads of people coming and spending the weekend in the city on their way to Alaska or from Alaska or whatever else. And I have never ever spoken to anybody who didn't say, gee, the people here are so nice. And you know what? I've lived in a lot of Canadian cities, and I've heard that everywhere I go. The people here are so nice. So everybody calm down. I'm sick of, I don't even consider myself from Vancouver or feel any particular tie other than I live here and work here and all the rest. But this is my home, and frankly, I get annoyed by sort of the pat arguments and name calling and insults and everything else. So I just wanted to say that, and I didn't want to have to write it in my blog because obviously this is like 12,000 words and I never would have finished it. So I just want to say, cut it out, and next year we'll see what happens. And if Toronto makes the playoffs, we'll see what happens. Toronto, Mr. National Post. And hopefully nothing will happen. But, you know, it is hockey, and that's how we roll. So have a great day. It is Father's Day. If you're a good dad, happy Father's Day. And take it easy. See you on Twitter.